Hello and welcome back to Allie's Golden Hour. My name is Allie, and today I'm going to be baking up some delicious Valentine's Day treats. These treats are going to be perfect for breakfast, for dessert, and to share with loved ones. I know I'm so excited to share these recipes with my husband as well as my coworkers and family. So today I have some exciting recipes planned. I have a chocolate velvet candy recipe, a strawberry puff pastry recipe, a chocolate raspberry cake, and a chocolate kiss cookie recipe. So if you're interested in seeing how I bake these up, please stay tuned. I will be featuring today a new recipe book for me, and that is the 2024 Southern Living Cookbook that I received for Christmas this year for my parents. I love baking up new recipes and old ones as well, but these are 4 new recipes to me that I'll be sharing with you. I will have all of the recipes linked down below so that if you wanted to bake these up yourself, you are welcome to find them down there. I will also be doing one recipe from the 2021 Southern Living Cookbook. One thing that I love about the Southern Living Cookbooks is that they come with full pictures, full color pictures of all of the recipes, so I know what they're going to look like at the end. And I find that these recipes are really versatile. They're really fun. I'm excited to bake up some treats for the people around me today.
I'm going
Thank
to
you.
get started with these chocolate velvet candies. These looked so good in the picture. They looked like C's candies. So to start, you take 12 ounces of milk chocolate and I just broke it up and I'm putting it into my mini food processor. If you have a large regular size food processor, you could follow the recipe exactly. I had to modify mine a little bit because I'm using the mini, but I just portioned the chocolate into two sections, and then I pulsed it until it was a fine, until it was nice and fine, and I poured it into a medium-sized bowl so that I could pulse up the second little bit. And then into this small saucepan, I'm adding 3/4 cup of whipping cream and 1/4 cup of unsalted butter, and I'm going to heat that, stirring it until it's completely melted. So the reason I wanted to start with these candies is because they needed to set up in the refrigerator. It said overnight, and that is something that I did not do. And I do believe if I would have set these overnight in the refrigerator, they would have turned out a lot better and would have been much easier to work with. So keep that in mind with this recipe. I did not leave them in the refrigerator long enough. So this would be a great recipe to try and make the night before and then assemble the next day. So to my pulsed up chocolate bar, I'm just adding that heavy whipping cream and butter mixture, and I'm going to whisk it until it's all the chocolate is melted and it's smooth. Lastly, to this bowl of chocolate, I am going to add 1.5 tablespoons of your coffee liqueur of choice. This one was the cheapest option at the grocery store, so that's the one I picked. And I'm just going to give that a nice little whisk to get it all incorporated. I'm going to scrape the edges of the bowl down to make sure it's all in the bottom of my bowl. Put a nice piece of cling wrap on the top and add it to my refrigerator, which I was hoping would be enough time while I was baking all of my other treats to set up, but it was not. So definitely let your chocolate chill overnight if you have the time. Next, I'm going to prepare the cake. This cake is a raspberry snack cake with salted milk chocolate frosting. And it's called a snack cake because it's a small cake. It's not made in a 9 by 13 like a typical sheet pan cake would be. I'm going to make it in a really sweet heart pan that I've already greased. so the cake should pop right out when it's ready. And what's great about this recipe is it can be made in one bowl. You don't need a stand mixer, you don't need a hand mixer. It should be super easy. At least we're going to see if it is. So I already have my oven preheating to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and to my medium mixing bowl, I am going to measure out 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. Next, I'll be adding 1 cup of granulated sugar. Next, I'll be adding 3/4 teaspoon of baking soda, 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt, and 1/4 teaspoon of ground cardamom. I found that the ground cardamom really gave this cake a nice depth of flavor. It's definitely something that's a little bit more unexpected in baked goods, but it's something that I really, really enjoy. However, if you do not love cardamom, you could definitely substitute it for ground ginger or cinnamon here. That would also be fantastic in this cake, I think. Maybe even a little bit of espresso powder. That would be a fun take on this one as well. Definitely paired with the chocolate frosting. So once I have all of those ingredients in my flour bowl with the sugar, I'm going to give it a nice whisk to make sure everything is well incorporated, and then I can move on to adding my wet ingredients. Now into that dry ingredients, I'm going to make a little well. That way I can add the wet ingredients to the center here. So I'm starting off with 3/4 cup of buttermilk. It calls for whole buttermilk, but I know that's hard to find in the store. So I opted for a low fat buttermilk option here, and it still turned out really wonderful. I'm also going to be adding 1/4 cup of canola oil. You use an oil of choice, just something that's a little bit light in flavor so that it doesn't overpower the cake. And then we'll be adding 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract. The vanilla extract from Trader Joe's has been my favorite lately. It is flavored with bourbon. I don't know if it's aged in a bourbon barrel or how they do that, but it's fantastic. And lastly, I'm going to add this egg. And keeping my whisking motion small here, I'm going to gently just whisk those wet ingredients together. So I'm not pushing my whisk all the way down through those dry ingredients. I'm just staying on top and whisking the wet ingredients. And if you notice at the beginning of my whisking, I kind of stabbed the egg yolk with my whisk to make sure that that was broken up before continuing to whisk. And then I'm taking my spatula and I'm just going to gently fold the dry ingredients into the wet ingredients. And this is what makes this recipe so fantastic, is that it is so incredibly easy to just throw it in this bowl. I didn't have to use my stand mixer. So I really, really loved how quick and easy this recipe was, and I will definitely be making this one again. I can already tell you, spoiler alert, this is a keeper. So my next step here is to spread half of the batter into my baking dish here. I did put a little bit more than half. I wish I would have left a little bit more for the top, but it's okay. It all worked out in the end. So I'm just going to even out this layer of batter with my spatula. And then you'll see I'm going to grab my raspberries to add, and it calls for 1 cup of fresh raspberries. And what I did is I just gently washed them, and then I left them to dry on a paper towel so they're not like sopping wet as I drop them into this batter. And then being dry will also help these berries not sink to the bottom. So I'm taking about 1/2 cup of these raspberries and just sprinkling them evenly across this layer. And I would also recommend pressing them into the batter a little bit to help with this second layer going on evenly, which I did not do. I wish I would have pressed them into the batter a little bit more. So here I go with my second half of batter, and then I'll go in on top with the rest of my raspberries. But while I finish kind of putting these raspberries on here, I want to know if there's a recipe that you enjoy making during Valentine's Day or for Valentine's Day. Do you have a cake recipe, or do you make a pie? Or is there a recipe that your significant other always asks for? I know when I first started dating my husband, I used to make brownies, but just out of the box. I don't know why that was my go-to, but I always just thought brownies were a really great Valentine's Day dessert. But yeah, I would love to know if there's a recipe that you love to make, and then with your recommendation, maybe I can make it too. So I'm just going to add the remaining 1/2 cup of my raspberries, and you can see here I did push those raspberries a little bit more into the batter. And then I'm going to put this cake into the oven for about 35 to 38 minutes. Next I'll be making the strawberry puff pastry. This should be easy peasy. I'm just using a pre-made puff pastry from the store, as well as already made strawberry jam. You are welcome to make your own. However, I'm just going to keep it simple and use what I have, and I'm excited to get this one going. Let's go. So when I first got this cookbook, I knew that this was going to be one of the recipes I definitely wanted to try making. So I'm really excited that I got to try it this day, and it's definitely a keeper as well. So for this one, we do need the oven to be at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. So once I took my cake out of the oven, I just bumped up my oven to 400. And I'm starting with these Pepperidge Farm puff pastry dough pieces. We need to prep these, and I'm prepping them on top of a parchment paper, which is what I'll use to bake these on as well. And so once I unfolded the puff pastry, it gave me 3 sections, but I needed to make 6, and I was having a hard time finding the center to make sure I got an even cut. So I decided to fold the puff pastry in half, gently pressing to make that crease right down the center. So I knew that my crease was going to be, or my cut was going to be exactly in half. And then I just used the creases that were made when it was all folded up to make the other cuts. So I got perfect rectangles out of that first piece. And then we will do the same thing with the second piece of puff pastry. next I'm taking the smallest heart-shaped cookie cutter that I have, and I'm just going to cut out hearts from the center of 6 of my puff pastry rectangles, and then the other 6 I'm going to leave whole because those will be the bottom of our puff pastry. I also did want to mention, I think this would be great if you have little ones around that enjoy baking, enjoy being in the kitchen with you. This was so much fun for me, and I do believe that this one would be really fun for the kiddos. Just the different elements of using the cookie cutter as well as the pizza cutter, and it's a lot of spreading and using different elements, but I also think it's simple enough for them to enjoy as well. So next I'm going to add half a cup of this is strawberry preserves, which has those bigger chunks of strawberry in it. And so I'm going to use my spatula and just take out half a cup and add it to my small bowl. And to that, we're going to add 2 teaspoons of cornstarch and 3/4 teaspoons of grated lemon zest from 1 lemon. And I just washed my lemon up really well. So I'm just going to take my microplane, and I like to hold the lemon in one hand and use the microplane along the top of the lemon. This helps make sure that my fingers and hand are safe. You do have to be really careful when using these microplanes. But I also wanted to mention, I would not recommend skipping this step. I really thought that the lemon zest helped bring out that brightness of flavor in the strawberry preserves, and it just made it extra good. I don't know how else to explain it besides it's just so fresh and so bright, and it's truly, truly delicious. So I'm just going to stir my preserves, the cornstarch and the zest together until I can't see any more of the cornstarch powder, and everything has been incorporated. And I'm just going to set my bowl aside and bring back over my puff pastry so we can assemble everything. So here I'm going to swap out the puff pastries and get the bottom of my puff pastries ready to go, like you can see there. And I'm going to add a heaping tablespoon of the preserves to my puff pastry. I would not recommend doing more than a heaping tablespoon though, because you want it to stay in the center so that we can add the egg wash to the outside, as well as making sure that they can crimp well and that the jelly stays inside of the puff pastry. So here you can see I tried to add any of the larger chunks of strawberries towards the center so that they kind of show through that peekaboo heart center. And I'm trying to leave a 1/2 inch of puff pastry along the edge so that we can add our egg wash. And that's the next step. So to 1 egg, I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of heavy whipping cream. And I'm going to give it a nice whisk to incorporate. And using a basting brush, I'm going to go around the edge of my puff pastries. And this is going to help the top puff pastry stick to the bottom. And the reason we added the cornstarch to the jelly is so that as it cooks and the jelly heats up, the cornstarch will help thicken the jelly so it doesn't just run out of the puff pastry. But also, once these do come out of the oven, it's important to let them sit and cool for a little bit because that jelly will be molten hot it will burn so bad. So definitely make sure you give these a little bit of time outside of the oven to cool. And here I'm just adding on the top piece of my puff pastry. And as you can see, I've taken a fork and just pricked the top of the puff pastry with a fork so that they don't balloon up too much. And then using my fork, I'm just going to crimp all along the edges to help stick them together. And the last step for these puff pastries is to give it a nice egg wash all the way around. And I'm just being very careful around the jelly heart in the center, not to drag the jelly out onto the rest of the puff pastry. And then these are ready to go into the oven for 18 to 20 minutes, rotating the sheet halfway through. And then you're going to let them cool so they don't burn you. So here's how the cake looks out of the oven. It's beautiful and brown. I'm going to put it on the wire racks to cool so that we can ice it. Oh my goodness, I love how it's looking so far. It's beautifully browned and it's smooth on the top, which this is technically going to be the top once I ice it, and then I'll decorate it. It's going to be so... So the next recipe is the chocolate kiss cookies. And this is a classic in my opinion. The kiss cookies are just classics for me. So I was really excited to try this variation. We're going to start with half a cup of unsalted butter into my stand mixer, as well as half a cup of packed light brown sugar and 1 cup of granulated sugar. And this is where I made the mistake. I was supposed to divide the granulated sugar, so I put too much sugar into my batter. The cookies turned out fine. Don't make the same mistake as me. It should actually be 3/4 cup of granulated sugar, because some of the sugar we keep to roll the cookies in at the end. I also just added 1 large egg at room temperature and 2 tablespoons of half and half and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And I'm going to give that a little whirl on my stand mixer on medium until fluffy for about 2 minutes. While that's getting fluffy, we're going to prepare our dry ingredients next. So to this bowl, I added 2 cups of all-purpose flour, 1/2 cup unsweetened cocoa, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, half a teaspoon of kosher salt, and we're going to give that a nice whisk. And then we're going to add it slowly into our wet ingredients in the stand mixer. All right, so my oven was set to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. This is supposed to make 36 cookies. These never end up making as many as they say for me. I think it made 2.5 dozen, if I'm not mistaken. But for this, I just used my tablespoon measure to measure out my dough balls And then I rolled some of them in sugar and some of them I did not add sugar just because I added too much into the dough. And then they bake for 8 minutes. You take them out, and this is where you're going to add in the chocolates. So here I used a combination of little heart chocolates that I picked up at Trader Joe's, as well as traditional Hershey's milk chocolates. But you can add any variation of Hershey's chocolates or chocolates to these, honestly. Reese's peanut butter cups would be absolutely delicious on these. And then you're going to pop them back into the oven for another 2 minutes. Here's how they look out of the oven. They look so pretty. I can't wait to get the glaze on them. To make the glaze, in my measuring cup here, I added 1 cup of powdered sugar, 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and a little pinch of salt. And I'm going to whisk it up until smooth. And the reason I like to make it in this liquid measuring cup is because it makes it really easy to drizzle on top of my pastries. Here's another little mistake that I did. I thought that the icing only needed 1 tablespoon of cream, but it actually needed a 1/4 cup. So I struggled with this for the longest time until I finally realized what I had done. And then I added the appropriate amount of cream and it came out beautifully. And so here's the magic shot right here of the icing, and you are welcome to use as much or as little as you like. These would also be fantastic just with a simple dusting of powdered sugar. They would look absolutely beautiful. Now that our cake has had time to cool, I'm going to whip up the frosting. This is a salted milk chocolate frosting, and yes, I am going to use this entire chocolate bar plus some of that second chocolate bar to make the frosting. This is what makes it so good. So this is a full 8-ounce milk chocolate bar, and it says chopped, but I just saved a few dishes and broke it up with my hands. And we're going to microwave it in 30-second increments until it's smooth like this. And I did not leave my butter out at room temperature, so I just plopped my cold butter in on top of my warm frosting and let it sit for 15 minutes. I don't want to melt the butter because that's what's going to help my frosting be really fluffy, but it did need to be soft. So that just softened it up perfectly. And we're going to add the melted chocolate and the butter, and that was 1 stick or 1/2 cup of unsalted butter to my stand mixer. And we're going to let that go until they have combined, which on medium speed took about 1 minute. And then once it's combined, we're going to add 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 1.5 cups of powdered sugar. And we're going to add the powdered sugar in on a low speed for about 1 minute, and it gets the most beautiful chocolate frosting. Just wait and see. So to my cooled cake, I'm just going to dollop the frosting along the top. And this is a very thick frosting, so I just took my time with it. I didn't expect it to be perfect. I wanted it to look very abstract, very swoopy, and I just took my time and had fun with it. I didn't take it too seriously. This is for my loved ones, so they'll love it regardless, right? Regardless of what it looks like. I knew it was going to taste delicious, and it was a lot of fun. So yeah, I'm just using my butter knife, and here you can see how it turned out. I did go along the edges as well. And to top it off, of course, I'm going to add some washed and dried fresh raspberries to the top. And I did use a little bit of mint at the end as well, just to add a little pop of green to one of the top corners. And I think it turned out really beautiful and really sweet. I just love, love, love this cake. All right, and to finish off our baking and candy making day, it was time to take out these candies from the refrigerator. And just a reminder, I do believe these would have turned out and been a little bit easier to work with had I let them sit in the refrigerator overnight. But here you can see I'm using 2 spoons to kind of scrape these balls of chocolate into chocolate sprinkles. And then I'm just going to use my fingers to gently toss them in the chocolate sprinkles and place them on this parchment lined baking sheet. And then these went back into the freezer for about an hour to fully set. And I would also recommend, if you are going to make these, do not leave them out on your counter or they will melt. They need to either stay in the freezer or stay in the refrigerator to keep their shape. So these would be one of those treats that you just leave out for a little bit and store away. And also, if you're going to gift them, definitely give a little warning to your loved ones that they can melt, so they don't end up with a big mess.
Hey, my love.
Okay.
Baked all day.
You did.
And I think everything looks really cute. My cake.
Woo!
Raspberry milk chocolate with like a milk chocolate frosting. I have the chocolate kiss cookies and the little chocolate velvets. Those look yummy. And of course the strawberry puff pastries that look also really, really yummy.
Those look so good.
Okay, so which one do you want to try first?
This this one is really calling my name. The
raspberry cake? Okay, let me cut off a little piece of it and let's give it a go. This one really wasn't that hard to make. It just I made it in one bowl.
What?
Yeah, I know. I didn't need a stand mixer or anything, and it smelled so good while I was making it.
I'm gonna split this piece, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I have your plate, please?
Yeah, say no more.
Let's see if we can see the middle, though.
Ooh, look at this.
It has like raspberries in.
Thank you.
It looks so good. Ooh, all right, I can smell the chocolate frosting for sure. There's a whole Hershey's milk chocolate bar in there. So let's give it a taste.
You can taste the Hershey's bar.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. And the cake itself is really, really
I like the raspberry.
I do too.
It doesn't overpower the like the chocolate doesn't overpower the raspberry.
So it's really good, just like vanilla cake, what you would expect from a vanilla cake. The outside of the cake got a little bit crunchy, which I think is super yummy. And then the chocolate frosting really does complement. And then the fresh raspberry on top is just the raspberry on top, per se. Okay. What do you want to try next?
The Hershey's Kisses, because wasn't that a variation of your Christmas one?
Yeah, so I make a peanut butter kiss cookie
during the holiday season, which I think a lot of us do, or a lot of people do. Go ahead and pick your... So some of them I put with sugar and some of them I put without sugar. And then some I also added these really pretty hearts. So cheers.
Cheers. I was expecting this to be a blast of chocolate, just like an uppercut, but it is surprisingly tame, and I like it.
Almost like a brownie, but not quite as chocolatey.
That's what it is. It's a brownie.
I think so. That's really, really delicious. Okay. Which one next? The chocolate velvets? Okay. I made these kind of big, so we're going to probably split one. All right.
You pick it.
I will pick it. And I don't know. I know I was supposed to let these sit overnight in the refrigerator.
Thank you.
But they don't really set up. They almost have like a very soft, it's almost like chocolate frosting, like chocolate ganache frosting.
Cheers.
Cheers. Very gooey.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
What is that I'm tasting?
Mm-hmm.
Hang on. What is it? Hang on.
What does it remind you of?
Not coffee, is it? Coffee grounds? Coffee grounds?
Mm-mm.
Coffee?
It's coffee liqueur.
Oh, I was like, what is that?
I like that little like aftertaste of coffee.
Oh, is that the alcohol coffee?
Yes.
Whoa.
The only thing I don't know about these is if you could keep them out at room temperature. They probably would need to stay in the refrigerator or the freezer to keep their shape because they're already kind of falling apart. But they are really delicious. All right. Getting sugared out already.
Yeah.
But the last but not least, we're going to try the strawberry strudel. These turned out so cute and they were super easy to make. Just a few ingredients. And they puffed up beautifully in the oven and they smelled so good.
Yay. As a kid growing up, I never had toaster strudels. My mother wouldn't let me have some, so this was going to be my first ever toaster strudel.
Ooh, well, enjoy. Cheers. Oh my goodness.
It's so puffy. So good, the filling.
Okay. I can definitely taste the addition of the lemon zest inside the filling, which I think really helps brighten it up. Really, really good. The outside stayed a little bit crunchy.
Oh my God.
Okay. So now that you've tried all the treats, which one would you want on Valentine's Day?
Is it, excuse me, is it breakfast, lunch, or dinner?
Any time of day, what is your number one treat on the table?
So it's a tie between the toaster strudel and this cake right here.
And the cake?
But I am a breakfast person, and I've always had these raspberry strudels in my head, so I'd have to go with the strudels.
Okay. I definitely agree. The strudel is fantastic. If you try nothing else, they're super easy to make, really delicious. I feel like anybody would enjoy them. You could have it for breakfast or dessert with coffee, cherry on top.
No,
I know we're definitely going to have these again for breakfast tomorrow.
We're not sharing those.
No, those are not being shared. We'll probably end up taking some of these treats to work with us to share with our coworkers because there's no way we're going to finish all of this. But I had a fun time making everything, and I'm glad that I got to share it with you, my love. And we'll definitely be making the strudels again for Valentine's Day, and probably the cake too. I think we liked the other ones, but I don't know if they're my favorites. I'm glad that I tried them because I've been wanting to try them for a little while. But yeah, anyway, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And if you choose to try one of these recipes, please let me know what you think of it down in the description box. Or if you're planning on making one, also leave me a comment down below. Which one would you want to try the most? And we'll see you in the next time. Bye.